And I found a very interesting quote in one of your publications where you say that developing country presents some of the most exciting investment opportunities.
We're talking about in the high ends of 30%. There's nowhere on the planet you can find that. Because the demand is there, the population is there. However, the challenges are also there.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Leaders and Strategists, the podcast where we talk about entrepreneurship, leadership, and social impact. My name is Anisette Fangwa. I'm a professor in strategy at McGill University. Today our guest is Professor Gilbert Kofi Adarkwah, an assistant professor in international business at HEC Montréal. He was born and raised in Ghana, but obtained his PhD in economics and management at BI Norwegian Business School. His research focused on impact investing, non-market strategy, and investment in Africa. Apart from being a researcher, he is a very incredible guy. He is also the founder, the co-founder, or the CEO of several venture capital and private equity companies, among which Pangea Accelerator and Gilbert and Partners. Thank you, Gilbert, to come here today on this platform, Leaders and Strategists. The idea is to have just a nice discussion about you, your research, and maybe your different projects in which you're involved. And just before asking all the technical questions, I have some Ghanaian friends, and I wanted to know, all of them told me that their name has a specific meaning which is related either to the date they were born or some event that happened at their birth time. Is it the case for you as well?
It is. It is the case for me. And before I answer, I want to say thank you very much for inviting me here. Okay. It's my honor and pleasure to be here. About the naming in Ghana, yes, it is true. In Ghana, based on the day you are born, or the circumstance you are born with, or the order of your birth, you can't get a name.
Oh, perfect.
Not everybody uses it, but the majority do that. So in my case, for example, my name is Gilbert Kofi Adarkwah. The Gilbert is they call it Christian name that my parents chose. The Kofi is my day name. It means I'm a boy born on a Friday. If I was a girl, I would have been called Ifwa. Okay. And there's a different tribal, there's a variant in the pronunciation of them. But, and then the Adarkwah is just the family name. Okay. Yeah. So this is how it is done in Ghana. So children get to pick their name.
Oh, in a way, yeah. For sure. Thank you very much. And today you're an assistant professor at HEC Montréal in international business.
Yes.
And you have a very inspiring story from a little village in Ghana to Norway. Can you walk us through that story a little bit?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a ride. Originally come from Ghana, a small village. The village actually got electricity in 2012. So now we have electricity now.
Okay.
But that time I had left already. After high school, or at that time they call it secondary school, I got a scholarship to study in Norway. Not to a university. In Norway they have something called folk high schooler, which is like the folk high school. Students spend a year, it's like a gap year, where after your high school you can learn to play the piano, do bike parking, or do anything that you feel like, just to take a gap year. I was given a scholarship to go there. And once I was there, I was interested in federal education in Norway, mainly because the education in Norway was free compared to Ghana. So I applied to a couple of schools and I got admitted to one of the programs. I did my bachelor's there. Then I got another scholarship to the Norwegian Business School. So I joined the Norwegian Business School. I did my master's. Then I got another scholarship. So I did a double degree in Germany at Mannheim Business School. And I was lucky. After that, during the time of writing my master's thesis, I got a job in the process. And I continued working. So my first job was a business coordinator for a pharmaceutical company. The name was ProNova Biopharma, but it was bought by BASF in 2014. So now it's now called BASF Norway. I was the business coordinator for the management team. So sending all the information to the financial market. The company was listed on the stock exchange, so I was doing all those things. And one day, the CEO called me and told me that I think you'll be a very good lawyer. Well, that triggered my interest. So I applied to the University of Oslo Law School and started studying. But I was lucky. The CEO said, so long as you do your job, you can do your law studies on the side. So I studied law. In the middle of that, I decided to do international relations because I wanted to maybe perhaps go into politics at some point. So I did that. I got the opportunity to work a bit at the United Nations with the Ghana mission there. But whilst in the UN, then I found the interest to do more academic studies, mainly because I felt that we needed more academics within the group that we were there. So I went back to Norway to continue on my studies, and I did a PhD. And after my PhD, I came to HEC as an assistant professor.
Congratulations. It's a very interesting path.
Yeah, thank you.
And it shows a lot of resilience because not only you were able to face the climate shock, the climate between like the warmth of Ghana and then the coldness of Norway. Can you speak a little bit about that? How do you survive? How do you engage with that?
Yeah, funny story actually. Because Norway is actually not that, well, no. Oslo, that part. Oslo is not that cold compared to Montreal, for example.
Okay.
However, it's a bit north, so it's a bit dark, so you don't see the light. So that has a much more mental and depressing effect than the cold is. But of course, coming from Ghana, anything less than 30 degrees is cold. So it was an adjustment. The first years was an adjustment. To be sincere, I actually don't know exactly what I did. I just took it day by day. I had a very big jacket that the biggest I could find actually, and then try to occupy myself with it. But in Norway, you do a lot of sport activities during the winter to keep you active on that. So either going to the gym or going skiing or doing snowboarding and stuff, which I didn't know how to do.
Okay.
So I was one of those head hazards on the ski slopes.
Actually, I can totally relate to that because when I arrived in Paris, I had a very large coat as well. And my school actually had some winter class where you were obliged to actually go and learn skiing. And I tried like 2 times and I always failed. And I was like, okay, that's good for me. It's not for me. I will just let you, and I will sit somewhere and I have a drink and not engage into that. Okay.
Now, in Norway, you have to learn how to ski at some form or structure because it's a very big part of the culture. So I still don't know how to brake. So if we go skiing, you have to let me go first.
Okay.
Because otherwise I'm going to run into you. I don't know how to brake in terms of that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay. And you mentioned that you are an assistant prof today.
Yes.
And you do research on impact investing in developing countries.
Yes.
And I found a very interesting quote in one of your publications where you say that developing country presents some of the most exciting investment opportunity. Can you explain us a little bit how is it the case and why is your research important?
That statement, I truly do believe it, that developing countries, particularly countries in Africa, present some of the most exciting investment opportunities at the moment. Take from, for example, even just interest rate on your savings, for example. We're talking about in the high ends of 30%. There's nowhere on the planet you can find that. So these are in African countries you can have that. And in most countries, I can speak specifically in detail about Ghana, for example, which I know the most things that are taken for granted in the West, for example, are not there. So, for example, if you want to open a coffee shop, that idea of having a coffee chain doesn't exist. So you don't need necessarily to be even a creative. You can pick a business model that already has been proven and tested, knows that it does work, and be able to implement it there because the demand is there, the population is there. However, the challenges are also there. So there are huge opportunities there in the sense of huge untapped markets with existing business models that we know already works that can be implemented. And there's a huge upside potential in terms of returns that you can make.
Okay. But how to access that market? I think that's also something that you study and you challenge a little bit well-known mantra who says think globally but act locally.
Yeah.
How can we actually, from your research, design a way to enter this very interesting market?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because there's a diversity of regulatory requirements that each country require for a foreign firm to be able to enter into, or a foreign investor to enter there. So, for example, again, I can mention countries like most West African countries, for example, or Ghana specifically. Most sectors, the government requires a 40% local participation. Okay. So the first criteria for entry is having to find a local partner to partner with, because you cannot go on your own in that sense. But come to the idea of the paper in California Management Review, where I was talking about why think global, act local might be a dangerous strategy for these markets. It's based on my experience. I used to work as a vice president and head of strategy for a major oil company in Europe. I wouldn't mention the name for confidentiality. And this oil company was operating in several African countries, so we traveled there, we met the governments, we met presidents, ministers, all these people. And you find out they were of the idea that, we need to act locally to be like the locals. However, the cultural differences and the differences in business culture, not just the societal, but the business culture. For example, a typical example is the idea of giving gifts. At least this company is European, it's an OECD country member, which means that the act of corruption against government officials abroad frown upon giving gifts. So giving gifts can actually become a liability for the enterprise itself and also the executives who actually gave it, because now the liability is put on the individual in that sense. So in that paper, what I wanted to drive executives' attention to is that mantra that, we have to do the way as the locals are doing, can be dangerous for them, both as executives and also for their companies, as they expose the companies to a lot of these liabilities that sometimes they might not pay attention to.
And I also know that you recently published a very interesting paper in Strategic Management Journal. Just so to let you know, guys, this is one of the top journals in the area of strategy. And it's very, very, I think it's had like less than 4% acceptance rate. Yep. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Can you speak into that a little bit about that article and what it is about?
Yes. So that article actually comes from my PhD studies. It's the third paper in my dissertation. And it's inspired by my work during the UN stay. I found out of the idea of relationship between countries and how that actually affects firms. Okay. And the literature has, in the past, spoke of the idea that, if countries are friends, firms do better. So, for example, if Senegal and Canada have a good relationship, Canadian firms will get better advantages if they go to Senegal, because they are friends with Canada and they have good access.
And they will benefit from the diplomatic
relations. Yeah. So this is what we know.
Okay.
However, we found out that, or we thought that this is, while that is true, we should not take for granted that diplomatic relations, just once it's established, it stays like that. So diplomatic relations do change. And if you go back historically, you can say, for example, Russia was friends of the West during Second World War, now the enemy. So you can go up and down. And we wanted to find out whether that volatility in the relationship, the idea that a relationship can fluctuate quickly within a short period of time, actually has an effect on firms' behavior or how firms will be treated. And what we found is that, yes, that volatility actually has a negative effect on companies actually investing in that country. So to put it to break it down, so if Canada and Senegal has a relationship, but that relationship keeps changing, making it difficult for firms or managers to predict, is Canada and Senegal friends or enemies?
Okay.
If the question is, it depends on the day.
Mm-hmm.
That has a negative effect on managers being able to do their business in Senegal. Okay. The reason is because they find it very difficult to predict the expectation of how the Senegalese government treat us, how stakeholders treat us, depending on how the relationship change. And we argue that firms preempt this uncertainty by reducing investment levels in those countries. And we check that on a number of subsidiaries that they have, or number of branches that they have, number of employees they keep in the country, the amount of sales they even do in that country, and we found out that it all becomes negative. Okay. So what we show is that, well, relationship between countries are important, but that relationship is important that relationship is predictable. Okay. Firms seems to not like uncertainty.
And you also work on impact investing.
Yeah.
Can you explain what it is and how it can be interesting today for developing countries?
Yeah, so impact investing is the idea that investors purposefully, and the key word is purposefully, investors actually focus on doing investment to achieve not just profit, but also social or environmental outcome. Okay. And research shows, there's a lot of studies, and a latest study that came in the Journal of Financial Economics shows that actually impact investors are willing to sometimes even forgo profit just to achieve the social aim. Okay. And we have bigger impact investors. Of course, we have traditional ones like the Rockefeller Foundations, to people like the Gates, the Bezos Health Fund, and those that come. So what this paper, we have a current paper that is currently undergoing the peer review process. Okay. Well, we are interested in is, because I'm an entrepreneur, I wanted to find out whether these impact investments actually help formalization of entrepreneurship. Okay. And this comes with my background in Africa. I've observed it growing up that most entrepreneurs in Africa are informal, and research shows that informal entrepreneurship does not necessarily give the best value for society compared to formal entrepreneurship, in the sense that they don't pay taxes, employees are not protected by any law because the firm is not even registered, they are not contributed to any pensions. A person will do their lifetime of work, and then they got pension, then they go to pension, there's nothing coming because the company is actually not registered into the system. So formalizing entrepreneurship activities are important. So we wanted to know through this paper whether the idea of impact investors being there, whether they are able to foster or trigger firms to formalize their businesses. And what we find is that, the presence of impact investors in the country increases the chances of formalization by 17.2%. That is very, very big.
And from your understanding, is it important for a business to actually formalize? Because we had a discussion with Rob Nason, which is Professor at McGill, and he told us that actually informal economy is also a vibrant economy, and we definitely need to look into that with different tools and be able to identify growth within that informal economy. But from your perspective, do you think that we need to transition most of the developing country economy into a formal one, or is there any interest into keeping it informal?
Well, I'm aware of Rob's work, and I do agree with him that informal economy is a vibrant economy and is something that is going to persist for some time. But if we want countries to develop, to grow, we want governments to be able to finance social programs. We want workers to receive the best of protection, not to the mercy of the entrepreneur, but actually laws govern those things. Then we need to shift most of the economy into a formal sector. And as I mentioned earlier, most informal firms do not pay taxes. And if a government is not able to raise funds through taxation, they cannot fund social programs, or even education, or even healthcare system. Workers that work for informal organizations are not necessarily employees with rights and stuff. So if you care about human rights, labor rights, and those things, then you want them actually the firm to be formalized. And we also know that actually growth, there's a paper in organization science about it by Saravida, and some colleagues at the Wharton School. And they are looking at informal firms tend to grow lesser than formally registered firms. And the reason is, for example, if a foreign multinational comes to a country and they're looking for suppliers, if you are not formally registered, you cannot be considered to be a supplier. So then you are keeping the growth of the firms at the bottom. So yes, I do agree with Rob that the informal economy is vibrant, and in some sectors they are important. Let me tell you example. For example, in Ghana, in my village, it's 10 hours from my village to Accra.
Okay.
One way.
Wow.
Okay, to drive. And that is when you have your own car. If you don't have a car and you are waiting for a car, then it's taking you days to get there. there's no business registration within my village or the district. If you want to register your business, you have to come to Accra. What is the entrepreneur's incentive to do that? So yes, so some places, the informal sector is it is the only option. But ideally, and this is what I'm hoping, that the impact investors or the new kind of investors who are not necessarily chasing profit, but actually have a bigger societal agenda, can help to either to improve the institutions to make it much more profitable or much more viable for firms to want to register.
And you're an investor yourself. I've seen that you either co-founded or founded several venture capital individuals. Can you speak a little bit into that? How do you came about doing that? And because it's quite rare for academics to also be involved in directly into investing. How do you come about it?
Yeah, well, at least I see myself as having a very weird background to be an academic, to be sincere with you. So then to all my academic colleagues, I do apologize that I'm messing up the decor here.
Okay.
No, yes, I have co-founded a couple of ventures. 3 of them are successful now or still alive, and then some of them that, like every startup group, are not successful. But I came to this actually by accident.
Okay.
But I've known the idea of entrepreneurship or the informal sense. When I was a kid, I used to help my mom at the farm. My mom used to bake bread. I used to sell the bread. So I used to do. So I know the idea. I have interest in the idea of entrepreneurship. But I came to this startup or founding of firms phase because when I started my PhD, a colleague introduced me to another person that he knew, his friend, who wanted to found an accelerator in Africa.
Okay.
The idea was simple. Let's look at the Y Combinators or the incubators and accelerator models that works here. Let's copy the ideas and implement them in Africa.
Okay.
On top of that, we will have an investment arm and invest in the companies that we select that are successful. So we both do fundraising as well as incubating of ideas.
Okay.
So I was brought in as a co-founder. I have to admit, I didn't come up with the idea. I was brought in later.
Okay.
So as a lawyer, I became the chief legal officer. I was the CFO. I did all the due diligence, the selection of the startups. That was my first experience. And that startup is still ongoing. It's called Pangaea Accelerator.
Okay.
It's located in Kenya now. We have a good collaboration with Strathmore University, and it's doing fantastic there.
Okay.
We just signed an agreement with GIS for $2 million to accelerate a couple of startups in East Africa to do that. Okay. So that's how I got into startup. And then from there, I got into other ventures. People, once you've done one and you are lucky and successful, then others invite you to join on others. And then as my portfolio began increasing, I decided to start a venture capital company so that I can invest in other startups. So I founded Gilbert & Partners, where we invest in startups in Africa, and most so far it's been Africa and Scandinavia. Okay. We just did our first investment here in Quebec last month.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Okay. But that's how I came into this startup business.
And do you have a specific focus on your investment or a specific target? Because you mentioned Africa. Is it like all different venture, or is it specific?
No, it's mostly a bit specific. We try to invest in what we know. Okay. Because the idea of investing in startups is it's not just giving money and then sitting on the bench and hoping that things get well. So we try to invest in what we know, mainly because we'll be able to help them to actually develop the idea. So we focus on digitalization in general of society itself. As I mentioned earlier in the previous question, that, for example, in Ghana, registering businesses, you have to travel 10 hours to do that.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to solve that problem in some way and they need funding, we will be willing to invest in that. So we invest in that. And we invest in financial sector related companies.
Okay. Oh, I took for granted that the audience knows what a venture capital is. Can you explain a little bit in detail what is it that you actually do?
Okay.
And what is the return that you can expect in those type of interviews?
Yeah. So what we are, venture capital is pretty much vetting companies, or actually vetting ideas that are yet to be companies. So what we do is we talk to entrepreneurs and potential founders, discuss with them the ideas, discuss to them, as we are doing here, talk to them about their background, their ideas, why they want to venture into that ideas, what is the potential for that idea to actually make impact, and what is the potential for that idea to actually succeed and become a business to run on its own.
Okay.
So pretty much that's what we do, talking and vetting and selecting ideas. And then the ones that we believe can make it, we help them to implement those ideas, either in terms of providing knowledge and support, or providing network, opening doors, or providing capital for them to be able to get on their feet.
And from your experience, what is, because you vet ideas, what is the percentage between like the idea in itself and the person who actually has that idea, the background, the experience that he has? How are you able to manage and balance between the two and be able to come up with like, this is the right person to carry out this idea and I'm willing to put my money on it?
No, there's no doubt. It's most importantly the person. From my experience, the majority, and even in my own startups, most of the idea that we start with, before we get to market, the idea has changed completely. It's like writing a paper. The initial idea and then the revision process, by the time it gets published, the paper looks different that. So it's usually the person. So what we're looking for most of the time is we're looking for passion, somebody who is passionate, but also passion has to have some basis. So the person has to have either some solid experience or some solid training or some solid education. I can be passionate about, for example, building flying cars. I have no idea about mechanical engineering. Doesn't matter how passionate I am. But so somebody with the base education or some base training, but they are passionate about the problem they want to solve. So you know that they have the competence to be able to do it, and probably they have to change things along the way. But because of the competence they have on the base, they will be able to go through that.
But how can you assess passion? And how can you, and for me as an entrepreneur potentially, how can I exhibit my passion? Do you have any stories that can speak into that can help the audience actually figure out what passion is really about and how to manifest it?
Yeah. So passion is a few things. So passion is evidence. Not necessarily like you founded companies before, but for example, you come in and say, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to solve the problem of, for example, in Montreal, one problem is the transport system. For example, if you buy a monthly card, you have to buy it at the beginning of the month. Mm-hmm. Because that's how the 30 days stop. Yeah. And the 30 days can start anywhere. Entrepreneur can come and say, oh, I want to be able to start a system where the 30 days can start anywhere. You buy the ticket. Then I'm looking for things like, has that person done something like that before, or something similar, or has been in an environment that has done that before, or has an education about either entrepreneurship, or actually does that understand what goes into the transport sector. Okay. So that is what we're looking at. Okay, that the problem do exist, but are you the right person to do it? So that's how we're looking about. It's not about something specific, but pretty much we are showing evidence that some signals that no, actually this problem is it. Do we agree on the problem? Yes, we agree on the problem. Okay, then it's about you telling me I am the right person because I used to work for STM for many years, or I used to work in that startup, or me and my team, we used to do this, or we've done that before. That shows I'm confident they will be able to do it.
Oh, so for you, it has nothing to do with the emotional commitment of the person to the idea?
No. I actually think the opposite with the emotional commitment of the idea, because most startups, you have to pivot the idea. And if you're so emotionally committed, probably you are not willing to pivot the idea. What happens when you find out, okay, STM said, no, we don't need that? What happens? That's okay, we have a platform now, we can maybe repurpose it to companies who want to actually use access card instead of keys to their work. So let's forget FCM and try to sell the product to a different person. If you're emotionally committed to that one and you say, no, since they don't want it, then I'm just going to sit down and then I'm done.
And from your experience as a venture capitalist, what advice will you give to a young entrepreneur looking for some capital on the market in general? What would be the best way or the best roadmap to actually from having an idea and having a successful enterprise which has received a lot of funds from different capitalists?
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting question because there's a lot of actual research about that, and there's no one size fits all. Different entrepreneurs does a different way. But my advice would be depending on the entrepreneur. So let me be very specific. Let me take a generic as entrepreneur. A student at McGill who has a good idea. How do I go about it? The first thing I would suggest for that person to do is to look around and make sure that they have a team or a mentor to make sure to challenge them, to validate the idea that actually there's something there. While doing that, at the same time, try to build a team around them. Either you do it with somebody who has a complementary skill to you to be able to go with the idea. Once that is in place, I would recommend that they join an accelerator or an incubator. McGill has the Dobson Center, for example. Try to get into it there. You get to know like-minded people doing the same thing. And venture capitalists like us look into those places. That's where we come in to look for entrepreneurs. So you will meet them there, and then you get to present your ideas to them. And if they think the idea has a potential, they can actually work with you to go through that. That is one way to go. Another way is if the idea is solid, you really believe in it, you talk to your friends and family and let them give you money to do it. Yeah. So, and that has been the traditional way. These are the ones you read about, the Facebooks, the Googles, it's either
friend and family.
Yeah, friends and family or colleagues.
You have to have friend and family who has extra money to give you.
Friends and family who has some extra money or colleagues who are. So, for example, one professor was one of the first people who invested in Google, for example. Okay. So you have to have that network around you who will give you that. But if you don't have that, then put yourself into a network. And how do you do that? Join one of those accelerators, incubators, which is a network on its own. So you just plug yourself into it.
And what about like the business plan that you need to write, the pitch, all those tools that you need to develop to actually...
Yeah, and usually people, and sometimes that's one of the things I get frustrated with as an academic who also does this investment. Academics usually use these words and it scares away young people. Oh, do I have to write a business plan? What is it? It's actually not more than a 12-slide document. You tell her this is the problem I want to solve. This is why this problem is important. This is my solution. Can I make a business out of it? Yes. This is how I will make a business out of it. How big can this get? This is how big it gets. And you have some numbers to show us. That's it. Okay. So it's nothing like elaborate documents. It's pretty much you explaining, I have an idea. I think I can build a successful business out of it. This is how big the business can be. And I am, or me and my team, are the right people to make it happen. And we need your help to either help us open door or fund it to this stage before we can raise big capital. This is pretty much it.
Interesting. I think with that answer, you have enhanced the ability of so many people to actually start a firm or actually write a business plan, because that's a very interesting structure that you just gave.
I hope so. Because, and this is something that usually frustrates me when people say, where's your business plan? No, ask them, how are you going to make this a business? If you put the question like that, they can actually usually tell you more. Because when you talk about business plan, and I've done this exercise most of the time with my students, both here in Canada, also in Norway. If you Google the word business plan, you get usually the first 3 hits is a Word document, 20 pages, with the 2 pages of table of content.
Exactly.
And then, no, that is not what we need. You actually just want to tell people, I have an idea. This idea can be a business. This is how I'm going to make it. And you tell us about like competitors. So somebody is doing it. Why am I different? I'm different because I do it this way compared to what they are doing. And if you help me, I think my way of doing it will be able to be much more attractive to the customer than what the competitors are doing. So support me and let's get this done. That's pretty much it.
So yes, you talk about all those very theoretical aspects, but do you have any concrete anecdote of people actually engaging, you have engaged with in the venture capitalism, And how do they work out, and how are they doing today?
Yes. I will tell you a story of a very interesting startup in Nigeria. Their name is Help Mom. And just HELP and Mom, MUM.
Okay.
Help Mom was one of the startups in our first cohort in Pangaea in 2017. And he came in from Nigeria to join the cohort in Nairobi.
Okay.
And his idea was simple. He was freshly out of medical school, trained as a doctor, and he found out that one of the biggest problems mothers in Nigeria were facing is the idea of poor prenatal health. So most infants born they die because of that, or because the mom doesn't have the basic things that. So he decided, no, I'm going to fix this problem by making a kit, just a small bag, a kit with all the basic things that a mother needs for the first 2 days of birth. And the price at the time in 2017 of that kit was $5. He was very passionate about the idea, and this is a startup we did not invest in. And I always think that it's a good story because it talks about how difficult it is as a venture capitalist to actually pick winners and losers at that stage. He was very passionate about the idea. And as I told you, when you ask me about what is passion, it's the idea of showing evidence that you do. He's trained as a medical doctor. He's not a random guy trying to do this. He's seen the problem. He knows the solution. Okay. But he was fresh out of school, no experience. They didn't know what a business model was. At that time, I was also looking for a business model. I was asking, this $5, is this going to make money? So we, as a team, decided, no, we are not going to invest in this company. Okay. Today, it's one of the most successful startups in Nigeria.
Oh, perfect.
And being funded by the World Bank, the Gates Foundation, the MasterCard Foundation. He was passionate about the challenge he wanted to solve. He took the medical education about it. He took it seriously. And once you are so dedicated to it and you have the competence, of course, it doesn't guarantee that every venture capitalist will invest in you. In our case, we passed over it. But others saw that. And of course, perhaps also by going through the accelerators, he got some experience, so probably things got better along the line. But he succeeded. And that shows that venture capital is a bit of a tricky game. The one you think might be a winner might not be a winner because they do very well. But I think my advice would be just look for evidence. Passion alone is not enough. A passion that can be proven. I have done the groundwork because I'm passionate about that problem and I have the competence to solve it. I think that helps.
Wow, interesting. And can you speak into some of your successes as well, maybe?
Well, some of our successes, we have a company called Onesha. We have a couple of companies in Kenya that are doing very, very well. One of them actually got into Y Combinator. And they are solving basic problems. So problems like they wanted to solve a problem of people showing up to work late and writing whichever hour they want. So for example, in places like Kenya, you have most construction workers, for example, they come and there's a notebook there. So you come and then if the first person wrote 6 o'clock, you just write 6:05, even if you should have 9, because that's the gap there. So they decided, let's make an app. And this app here, people sign with their template. So you just come in with your template, so there's no that error. And on top of that, you can actually pay people's salary because it accumulates the salaries and pay it through their mobile banking for them. So the employees don't have to worry about counting the times. Employers can get their money on time. We invested in that company. That company now, we invested as a valuation of $100,000. They got into Y Combinator for a valuation of $24 million. And now they are growing well. They just got a banking license and trying to go into insurance also because they found out that most employers also wanted to buy insurance. So gradually it goes like that. We were very happy with the team because the team were very serious. And then they also came in and said, okay, this is a prototype. We actually have some customers who are trying it. And we came in to help them look at other opportunities. Or maybe you should go into the insurance part about it. Maybe you should go into the paying of the salaries. You should go into the processing of the pay slips and those things. So we came in with that knowledge to help them grow the company.
Thank you very much. You mentioned valuation, and most of the audience might not understand exactly what it means, and also how important it is and how you get paid out of it. Can you a little bit elaborate on that?
Valuation is pretty much how much you are willing to pay for something. Okay. So for example, if I come to you and say, I want to sell this art decoration here for $100, okay, and you tell me, no, I think it's worth $10. So it's pretty much a negotiation. Why do you think it's worth $100? Why do you think it's worth $10? For startups, usually at our stage, we usually come with the idea stage. So at the idea stage, there's some rules of thumb on how much to evaluate the company. They're usually very low valuation because we have a 95% or some even shows close to 98% chances of failure. Yeah. So we are not there to make more money than, but in essence, valuation is just pretty much the price somebody is willing to pay for your company.
And how do the venture capitalists actually benefit from an increase such as the one you described?
Yes.
From 100,000 to 24 million?
Yes. So that is, venture capitalists take most risk because you come at the early stage, and I can tell you stories of different companies that has gone under. If you look at Gilbert and Partners, you will see some of them still. Actually, I've not removed them yet, still on the website that has gone under. So they stand to lose a lot because you come at the idea stage, and as we talked about, somebody might be very passionate, they are not willing to pivot the idea. So all of a sudden, your money is gone, just like that. So we usually come in at a very early stage, take the risk. But if the company succeed, and that's the growth curve in terms of the value of the company can go very quick. So if you're a startup and you come in early and you help the entrepreneurs for them to succeed, then the success could be very, very good. Famous example is the people who invested in Facebook from the start, or from Dropbox and or those, and those shows that it's high risk, high returns.
Okay, perfect, interesting. So it's a little bit of a gamble in a sense.
It's I will not say gamble like you're throwing a coin into a rolling machine. It's but there is risk. So because here it's a long process. You talk with people, you work with them. So it's not let's go randomly and pick a random person and let them go and make the next. No, it's kind of calculated. But as any venture, and also as an academic, not all your papers will end up in ASQ. So sometimes they don't, even though you think the product was good, everything was good, but it doesn't end up the way you wanted it to go due to several reasons. And our job is to make sure that we reduce the ones that can be reduced, and to help that majority of the companies will succeed. Yeah.
And yeah, to wrap up a little bit the discussion, you have this very inspiring journey, and as an academic and as an entrepreneur as well. But when you look into the future, do you have like a personal goal that you want to achieve, or a legacy you want to impart to the next generation?
No. Legacy is a very big word. As a kid from a village that got electricity just in 2012, it's but I have a wish. Something that I wish I could. I would like to see done. If I can contribute to that, I would really appreciate that. I will really be happy. And the idea is, and it's simple, and that's something actually you can help with.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear about it.
No, because I want to see one of the top business schools in the world be an African business school. Africa is half of the world population now, almost. If you look at, for example, the Financial Times top 100 business school, zero comes from the continent. And it's not because we don't have the people. People like you, myself, we have, the list goes on and on. So my wish is maybe one day start a business school on the continent. I'm not saying there are no business schools. There are even too many business schools on the continent, but a good one.
Okay.
A good one that can compete globally, actually. And the reason is this. I think that if we want to build countries in Africa, if we want to develop them, we need business-savvy people to run the projects, to start the businesses, to manage them, and to be able to train them well. To be able to do that, I think it's a recipe for the success of the countries in that sense. And if I'm able to contribute to lay the foundation for such an institution to solve this problem, I think I'll be very happy with my life.
And how much risk do you think it represent? And how much money you're maybe willing to engage in such a project?
It depends. The risk is low. The risk itself is low because Africa or most African countries have a very youthful population, and most of them want education. Okay. And we also see that in the admission statistics in Africans studying abroad everywhere. So, because the customers pretty much is actually students or people, citizens who want to go to school, and that one there's no shortage of that. So we have a lot. So we have customer base there, and it's also evident in the existing business schools. No school in Africa is going bankrupt. I've not heard it yet. They are there. They are doing so. The risk is low. The biggest part of risk is getting the best faculty. The best faculty, and that comes at a cost. You have to pay them very, very top dollars, and that requires a substantial amount of startup capital. And to be able to pay that, there are two ways to do that. Either you charge the fees and use that to pay, and to charge higher fees in most countries, most students cannot afford. So you need some funding from some sources, either from the governments themselves to pump it out. Right? But that is pretty much what is to take. Good faculty, world-class faculty, you don't accept for anything below that, and world-class curriculum, and I think with that you can be able to build a business school like that. And we've seen that. This is not new. And I usually focus, I tell you about ideas that you can just take, that has been proven and you just use. We've seen that. We've seen that in CIPS, the China European International Business School. It's number 5 on the Financial Times list. It was started in 2002.
22
in
years
Shanghai.
ago.
Yeah. So we've seen that happening. We've seen that in other schools. We have the Singapore Management Universities. We've seen that. We've seen INSEAD in Singapore. We've seen recently, or starting in January, NYU in Abu Dhabi. So we've seen that it can be done. There's that it's not been done on the continent yet. And because there are some efforts. There are the African School of Economics in Benin, but that is training people who want to do PhDs abroad, not necessarily that. But there are some efforts. But this is something that I'm very passionate about.
Thank you very much, Gilbert. And I'm more than willing to actually engage in that project if you have anything specific that I can do.
Yeah, we've started. We made some baby steps. So now we actually have it only exists online, doesn't it? So we actually have a name registered.
Oh, wow.
It's called ASMT.
ASMT. Okay.
So if you go on LinkedIn or Facebook, it's actually there. We have a couple of hundreds of followers there. And so far, we just share scholarship opportunities to people who want to study abroad. As an academic, I get all these emails with the PhD position, and then I just post the link there for people to get exposed to them because they don't have the same inbox as I have. So I share those things there. But the idea is to start a technology and management business school on the continent. And I think that would be good.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much, Gilbert. Thank you once again for attending this discussion and be willing to share some of your research, some of your experience as an entrepreneur and as a venture capitalist as well. And thank you for this legacy. I really hope and wish that this school come out of the ground and be as successful as you wish it to be. I think it will be a very great step moving forward for the whole continent.
I hope so too. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Really, really enjoyed our conversation. Okay. And please do let me know if there's anything I could help with. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you very much, Gilbert. Have a very nice day.